10.
Shall we let people in?
Sure. Well, yay. Welcome, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Hello there. Hey, I'm a newbie, and I
That's great.
can't open my screen all the way. Is there a meeting ID that I need to put on?
No, you're in. You're in, Joseph.
Yes. Oh, I
You're
am?
in. You're in. We're sharing screen right now to show the last book in this series, Winter in America Again.
Oh, okay.
And this is also the website for the ongoing series. The next book will be called Winter in America Still. And we don't have a cover for that. So we just, as our graphic, we just use the cover of the last book. And so I would just say if you could mute unless you're speaking, that's going to be helpful because often there's background noise. The dog barks. If the cat comes in, the cat usually shows us their best feature, and well, I guess there's not much we can do about that, but at least we won't hear it. So Roxi Power and Allia Abdullah-matta are my co-facilitators. We're missing our other co-editor, Katie Sarah Zale, who had a conflict. And so we're tag teaming it here. We'll have three facilitators, hopefully three writing exercises, and give a sense of what we're trying to do with this book. So I think that the proper thing to do is to wait till about 12:05. Is it not, Roxy Power?
Sure, that sounds good. I was just going to take you guys on a tour of the website, and then we're going to get started right away. And there will be a recording for people who come in late. Also, we emailed you. I'll let love on. Okay, waiting. Okay. We also emailed you the document that we'll be presenting today. So you might want to check your email if you like looking at the document on your own. Okay, so a couple more minutes. So while we're waiting for a few more people to show up, we're just so pleased that you guys are here. Thank you. And before I start taking you on a little tour of our very informative website, is there anybody who has a quick question? Because we'll get started at 12:05. Or a good joke. Or some tears for the times. Got some more people coming in. That's good. Welcome, Todd. Well, I see some names I recognize. I see Taryn, you were in the last anthology, yeah? Great.
Indeed, they were.
Indeed, they were.
Do we
Okay.
have some people in the waiting room still? Or are they in?
Don't see anyone in the waiting room.
Oh, okay, maybe it's from before. Okay.
So, great. If you have something to write with, that would be good because I'll just say that we're going to be hitting the ground running pretty quickly in less than a minute. And then we will be having three presentations by three of the co-editors. Katie Sarah Zale is not able to make it today, and we miss her. But at the ends of each one of our presentations, we're going to give you guys an opportunity to respond to what we just said and a prompt. And then at the very end of our presentations, we'll give you a chance, if you feel like it, to share your work with us. Okay? So it is 12:05. I'm just going to get started. I'm Roxi Power. Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
I just want to say that we're not going to be recording what people share. So that won't be part of the final thing. So you could share raw work. Don't worry that it's going to be preserved for eternity. on some cloud somewhere. So we're recording the program specifically for our presentation, and then I'll either turn it off or edit that part out of the final thing. With that said, please welcome our co-editor from Santa Cruz, California, Roxi Power.
Okay, great. Thank you, Paul. So you all probably have access to our website because otherwise you may not have been able to find your way here. And thank you for finding your way here. So it's very newsy. And we invite you to take a look at least the splash page here where the call for submissions, you can learn more about it. So we invite poets and artists to contribute. This is our sequel anthology to Winter in America Again. And we're calling this one Winter in America Still, which will be published in time for the midterm elections. Our preference is that you respond to something or a feeling, a condition, an event that has happened since the election or inauguration, because so much has happened. Now, while we don't necessarily at all require that your poetry be topical in nature, you don't have to explicate an event necessarily. You can be more abstract than that. You can be, in some ways, less pointed, less on the nose about a situation. We're hoping that at least what you're writing from is fairly current. So a deeper reflection. We wanted our anthology, and we think we succeeded in putting together an anthology that was more so reflective than reactive. So when we would read poems that were somewhat ranty, calling you know who names, just getting our anger out on the page, several of us here you don't have to be a practicing Buddhist like some of us are, but some of us are feeling, I think we all feel in common that just raw anger, unless it's super interesting in some ways, it's not necessarily going to change the situation. Okay, so this time the change that we have in place is that we're looking for more than just poetry. So last time it was, as you can see here, poets respond to the 2024 election. Now we're opening up the field to include poetry, prose, artwork, cross-genre, or intermediate work. And because we as four editors have very different aesthetics, we're going to share some of that with you today because we're not all coming from a singular school of thought when it comes to poetry and other work. I'm a performance poet, for example. And so we are looking for the ability to not necessarily represent a singular kind of type of poetry, but diverse and inclusive types of poetry, so long as it's a little bit more reflective rather than reactive, if that's possible. Okay, and then there are submission guidelines here. You can purchase this, our first book, there. This is a sample from one of our many readings and events that we had over the course of the last several months to promote the book. And boy, did we promote the heck out of it. And you're here at this workshop, obviously, and you can look into some of our other events. So you can rest assured that if you end up in the anthology, that there will probably be opportunities for you to read your work. Why share your creative work? Because your voice is part of something larger. So we're really interested in the community that we're forming out of this. And we're looking again for compassion in the face of division. That doesn't mean that you have to suppress your anger or real feelings. We're not trying to get you to be phony at all. Authenticity is important. So then you can submit your work here and you'll just see that you put your name, what you want to be called, your email, your phone. It's not going to be shared. And then the text upload has everything on it. We ask you for a bio, very short, and an artist statement. Artist statement is just something you want to say about the type of work that you've submitted or that you tend to create in general, so that we know more about you, so that we don't have to do a lot of research on you necessarily, and so that it informs, so that your intentions inform our understanding of you. We don't want to jump to conclusions about you, just kind of a gut level response because we didn't have enough coffee that day. We want to go back and say, what were you really hoping? What prism do you want us to look through to understand you? And if you have any other comments, fire away. So that's pretty much it. You can also, just explore the old one here and look at media here and etc. Do you guys have any questions about the website? We were hoping to do a quick run through so that we can get right into the substance of our workshops. Again, we're recording. And at the very end, for those of you who came a little bit late, I just want to say, let me just stop the share and take a look at all of your beautiful faces. Hi. That Paul, Allia, and I are going to take you through some poems that were in the first anthology that reflect our perspectives, what we kind of liked, what we were looking for. And please, again, it's not an undergraduate, creative writing workshop where you're trying to please the teacher. Be yourselves. But you're just getting to know us and our perspectives, what we like. And then we're going to give you a workshop prompt to write to for 10 minutes or less, drawing on what we've just presented. And I just want to say in advance, because I'm presenting second, if you want to be thinking about what I'm going to be asking you to do, is think about a particular community that you want to represent, because I'm thinking about specificity. And, if there's somebody who's been affected by this election and you want to write about them, just start brainstorming in your head. That's not to say do that instead of listening to Allia, but that's what I'm going to be asking you to do, is to think about a community that you will be describing. Okay. And folks, editors, did I miss anything, or should we just hit it with Allia?
I think I don't have anything to add, Paul.
And we'll get to know you. We're sorry that we're not, doing one of those long, hey, let's meet each other things, but we certainly will by the end. Okay. We value your time. And thank you for coming today. Okay, Allia, I think you can share the screen if you would like to begin.
Yep. Paul, is there anything you want to add?
No, I'm
Okay.
just really honored to be here. I love how many people are here and seeing many familiar faces. I'm excited about building community in a time where so much in the news is depressing over and over, and we're being proactive. We're doing something about it. We're connecting with like-minded others, and we're creating a path towards a more people-centric union, however that manifests. And I'm all for that.
Okay, great. All right, so good afternoon, everyone. I'm Allia, abdullah-matta, as you probably could see on my screen, I guess, hopefully. So I'm just gonna kick us off. So I think we're skipping this review and going straight, or because I wasn't gonna talk about that. Were you gonna talk about that, Paul, or no? Sorry. In the document, okay. So just to comment on the document you should have received. I'm sharing it here. I think most of you received it. If you registered a little later, then you may not have, because because I know some people registered like right before, but the link is in the chat if you need it. And if you need it again, we can put it again. So basically, I'm going to talk to you about my aesthetic and poetics, right? So my aesthetic and poetics are informed and inspired by the Black arts movement poets, which is an important starting point. Poetry must do or say something. If I had more time, I could list the many poets from this era and contemporary poets who begin with BAM poets Amiri Baraka and Sonia Sanchez as case studies for what poems do or what poems should do. So those are the two people I'm thinking about as I talk about my aesthetic today. So Baraka represents my earliest understanding of what poems should do and what I wanted my poems to do, to represent culture, experience, voice, and a politics of visibility. Baraka says in his poem Black Art, poems are bullshit unless they are teeth or trees or lemons piled on a step, or Black ladies dying of men leaving nickel hearts beating them down. We want live words of the hip hop world, flesh and cursing blood, hearts, brains, souls, splintering fire. And if you all know who Amiri Baraka is, you know what he did. And he always had something to say. So then also Sonia Sanchez has influenced my practice of thinking about the role of poetry, starting with her essay, The Poet is the Creator of Social Values. This essay frames the foundation of a poetics of voice and visibility in my mind and practice. Sanchez states the power that the poet has to create, preserve, or destroy social values depends greatly on the quality of the poet's social visibility and the functionary opportunity available to poetry to impact lives. And again, my aesthetic is really coming from that space. I spend a lot of time in my own work looking, I think some of my poetry is archival from research, from looking at, what's in the news, looking at family records, photographs, all those things kind of inform what I'm writing about. Keeping these ideas in mind, I read poetry for pleasure and to be better at the craft. In this way, I'm looking for specific things, what the poem says and what it does, what it looks like on the page, and what it does for or to me. Does it strike me in some way? Does it hold me? And what are the holding emotions and language? And I just want to add a note here based on, Roxy walking us through the website. We definitely are looking for all kinds of good, I want to say the good stuff, right? The stuff that holds us in particular ways. In terms of what I look for as a reader, teacher, and poetry editor, there are overlapping elements. These various roles affect the way I select and comment on the work. I look for the story of the poem, how the poem resonates on the page or it sounds to my ear when read out loud. What is the poet telling or teaching us about the world? What voices are represented in the poem? And has the poet done the job of showing the thing we should take away from the poem? And for me, that's a really important part of what I select and what I'm looking for, things that will resonate with people, resonate with me and resonate with others. So the following excerpts are examples from Winter in America again, the first anthology that addressed some of these elements. So number one is from the first example from the poet C by Keisha Gay Anderson. And she says, the poets see things others want to disappear or forget, like bodies stacked on trucks, moving quietly after midnight, or forged documents to make a child a wife. So that's one example excerpt from the poem that we published in the anthology. The second is an excerpt from Bedtime for America by J.P. Howard. This blue is my body. This red is my blood. This blood tastes like home. These stars sewn on black of my skin shine when night comes. So again, an example from the anthology. Number three, My Grandmother's Glory. Americana doesn't see us. We're the silent seamstress, holding on to hope and covering ourselves in our grandmother's glory. We vote because our grandmothers couldn't. And the last excerpt I want to share is from our very own Paul Nelson, who's here. Self-care tips for the new winter in America. Stay sober. No amount of wine can erase the enabled hate. Don't worry. Worry's a misuse of the imagination. Deprima knows as holy. Grieve then, organize, recognize your bioregion. Ginkgo leaves still fall. Watch them fall. Breathe again. Vow kindness. And that's our very own Paul Nelson, which sometimes I just want to stop and let him read it himself. Hopefully I could capture it as strongly as it hit me. So these are some of the things I'm thinking about as an editor, and you'll hear from some of my co-editors. So now we can kind of go right to the prompt, right? And so I've given you kind of two options. I think that when I teach my classes, I like to give students more than one option because sometimes it doesn't hold you, right? The particular thing. So option one, you can grab a line or two and you have the document, and I can scroll it back up as well. An image excerpts and free write for 2 minutes. Then write a poem that could be in conversation with the lines or these pieces. Think about the larger story and or context of the poem and how it says something about A, America, or B, how to respond to the drama and trauma of America. And C, how do we continue? Write a list of instructions that will help us to be better and to know better, right? So for C, so you can pick any of those areas. You only have a few minutes, really about 8 to 10 minutes. And then, so, I would say do what feels organic for you. Or you can do option 2, select 6 words across the excerpts that you will incorporate into your poem. Use these words to jumpstart your writing and go wherever they take you. How does your piece arrive at or represent an antidote for winter in America? So I just want to make sure that everyone can access the document, because then you can scroll and look on your own. Or if you'd like me to scroll back up, I can do that as well. And do we have any questions before we start writing? No? Okay, so well, I'm in New York, so it's 3:21 for me, 12:21 for you. So why don't we say we'll go until let's do 9 minutes. We said 8 to 10. If we strive for 9, we'll be done by 10. So 1 to 2 more minutes. So can you wrap up your last line or last couple words? Okay, that's time. That's 10 minutes exactly. So thank you for being here this afternoon, and I look forward to anyone that'd like to share anything at the end. I'm going to pass the mic to Roxy.
Ooh, I'm still wrapped up in poetry brain. That was really generative. Thank you so much, Allia. Beautiful. Okay, let me just go over here to my crazy desktop. Oh, do you see everything? Is that what I really want to do? Um, I'm not entirely sure if you can see anything. Can y'all see anything?
Yes, we can see. I can see your screen.
Okay, thanks. So I'm just going to leap right in. You can read about me if you want to. I'll just paraphrase myself to say, first of all, I am like in the words of Rimbaud, an other. I is an other. So, I'm a different person when I wake up in the morning than I am when I go to bed, and that's sort of I don't know, Buddhist premise that our minds are always changing. And so don't think that just because I like in this paragraph unexpected leaps between worlds, ideas, linguistic registers, poetry grounded in unknowability and uncertainty, that if you make some pronouncements or some certainties or some statements of clarity, that this particular editor is going to say, nah, I'm very open. I'm a very open person, and I really want to know, what you have to say. I personally love, exploratory poetry that is open to revelation. I like to write myself into understanding and without a kind of fearful progression through steps that I've already taken before, if that makes sense. And that's why I often start my poems with a word list so that I am kind of bound to their terms. It's like John Cage would work with chance operations. He was a musical composer. Maybe some of you have heard of him. So he would say, okay, here are the 6 notes I'm going to work with. And then he would throw the I Ching or some divinatory thing to randomize them and say, okay, I'm going to let chance dictate the order of these words. So he was always kind of toggling between certainty and uncertainty. Whatever works for you. And so please don't think that I hate Mary Oliver or certainly not Rilke or James Wright, but dogmas and formulas kind of make me nervous. Shoulds. If I recognize the epiphany that's coming, your one wild and precious life, I have wasted my life, even you must change your life. Um, you know, that's just me. That I feel like the poet's one wild and precious imagination and its own strange music has been co-opted. So I just want to, kind of encourage you to explore some depths because I think we're all feeling some depthy things right now. And we may need to write for a while to find a form that is an extension of our content. In the famous words of Robert Creeley, who was quoted by Charles Olson in Projective Verse, try not to just kind of plug your complicated feelings into forms that you already know about, because the more we play it safe and our poetry plays it safe, the less we're going to discover and the less the reader discovers. And now I sound like I'm sermonizing. So, um, practice your own rules. So I'm just going to play a brief, I'm going to take up most of my time by playing, I hope, a clip that you can hear from an interview with one of my favorite poets, Paul Hoover, who founded the journal with his then partner Maxine Chernoff, New American Writing, that changed the landscape of exploratory poetry for the last several decades. And I'm a podcaster with the Hive Poetry Collective out of Santa Cruz, and I just have this brief interview with him. He's going to read his poem, which is right here, Signs and Wonders. So you'll get to hear his sonorous voice reading his poem and discussing it. You'll get a sense of the kind of poem that I love. That's one among many. And then we're going to write a poem so you can start thinking as you listen to us. If you tune out, think, ah, what area of the country or world, because this election has affected the whole world, right? Where do I want to zero in for my 8 or so minutes of writing to describe a community that I know? He talks about the workers in Bakersfield and Coalinga, California, baristas and Walmart workers who eat at Popeyes. He has a lot of specific details building out the community and talking a little bit about how they were affected. And then I'm going to ask you to do what he did, which is to select a quote at the beginning to play off of. So he has a complicated quote. You can choose a simple one. If you can look at the document and start deciding on a quote. I gave you one that probably everyone will choose. We'll get like a lot of these Gil Scott Heron quotes because our whole book is named after this song. And this is a quote from his song, and there are others. So, for example, you might not be a woman or a feminist, so you might want to just take part of the Simone de Beauvoir quote. Thus, it is that no group has ever sets itself as the one without setting the other over against itself. So you might think of a one and other combination that's not necessarily man and woman. So you can just take a part of a quote. So I'm just letting you know in advance some elements of this prompt so that you can be thinking about it as we listen. So let's see, first of all, if you can even hear this interview. And I'm going to play a second of it and see if it works. Paul, actually, I think we did this last time. I tried to just play it into the air, and then you told me there was a way to play it into the recording. Is that true?
It is true. When you do share, and
Hmm.
I will stop share so that you can reshare with the
Hmm.
audio. There are a couple little boxes that are on the right and that say share audio and maximize audio or something like that. So that's what you have to do. You have to make sure
Do I
you.
do that before I share? Because how about this? How about you do that? And that way it'll be less time consuming. And then after we play that audio bit, then we'll turn it back over to me. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And
I think teaching me how to do it is probably not what we signed up for.
I'm going to click on Roxy interviews Paul Hoover, and I have it.
Gorgeous and compressed language. You
It's a
hear?
it's a 13-minute and 43-second track.
I may cut that off.
And I click on share and I go like this.
Gorgeous and compressed language, as you're known for. I think we need to move on to a poem by Paul Hoover now, also a newer poem by him called Signs and Wonders, because it's all, not only is it one of his newer poems in his new and selected called Oh and Green, and because its own design requires us to move in and out of history's grasp to get it. When I asked Paul if he'd send some work to our anthology, Winter in America Again, Poets Respond to 2024 Election, Signs and Wonders was the first poem I received, and I was thrilled. I had a sense that, okay, all will be well. And of course, Maxine's great poetry is also in the anthology. But Paul, it wouldn't hurt to set the poem up with just a brief, if you want, bit about the modernist Austrian logician Kurt Gödel, whose ideas permeate this poem. His incompleteness theorem, published in 1931, is not easily paraphrased, but one key idea is that you can't use logic to prove logic. No axioms can render true all mathematical statements of truth. That one's hard for me to understand, but it did kind of remind me of my sense that when what I've read about Derrida, his theory of radical undecidability at the heart of logic is kind of like Derrida destabilizing the metaphysical foundations of Western philosophy. We like our binaries, we like our rights and wrongs, our goods and bads, our gods to lead us, as you say. Uh, you know, but I also don't see you, either one of you, as much, you don't have any Eliot footnotes in your poems. So you may not want to find, you may not want to say more before you read, but is there anything that the readers, the listeners would find helpful to know before you read?
Well, the Kurt Gödel, I'm not a philosopher, but I love to read about philosophy because it's always deals with puzzlement. It raises often more questions than it can answer.
Mm.
And I think the poetry that I'm drawn toward is on the mystical side. Like there's puzzlement throughout, but it's fertile contradiction.
Love that.
So here I'll read the quote. If it is if if it is consistent, it is incomplete. If complete, inconsistent. Now you could sit at the bus stop and think about that the rest of the day. What is the after there? And why did I use this for the poem that
Something happened to the sound.
comments on the American
Okay,
scene? And Signs and Wonders was an Eliot title also.
oh.
But the secret behind all these poems, Gravity's Children, that they're based on the Old Testament. I was raised in the Church of the Brethren, which holds to the New Testament. It's kind of like Amish and Mennonites. Everywhere we lived, there were Amish out in the country. And yeah, my dad was a minister of the church.
Oh.
But so I wind up writing about the Old Testament, which is completely foreign to me. Should I start the poem? Signs and Wonders.
Okay, Paul,
If
can
it is
you
consistent, it is
scroll
incomplete.
up and
If
show the
complete,
poem as he speaks? Thanks.
Can you say that again, please? I don't know what you said.
Oh, I'm sorry. If it's possible to have on the screen before our viewers here the poem itself, that would be awesome. It's on the document below the link. I don't know if you can do that. It's okay if not. Just might be helpful. Thanks so much. Asking a lot of you. Sorry. If it's impossible, y'all can follow along.
Just 1 second. Just one
yeah.
second.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh no. Okay, I see. It's not easy.
No, it's very complicated. And
Okay.
I don't know where to find.
Yeah, no, don't do it. Don't do it.
So hold on, here we go. So I want to do this.
inconsistent. Kurt Gödel. For it will happen that they live in Bakersfield in the gardens of Coalinga, where they enter the rock and live in the rock and remain in the rock when they die. For their high definition eyes are more than nature and art, and the dust of their seeing paints them from within. For they please themselves with images and images of images. Their lips are stung by bees. Their breasts yield no milk. The miser lies down with the master, the skinny clerk with the fat. For the land of the plenty is the land of baristas. For their sisters work at Walmart and their unions are non-existent. They prepare the table with Popeyes, fuel desire with lottery tickets, and live forever downwind from the disaster. Signs of trees, but no trees. Images of water, but nothing clear to drink. They burn at the sight of beauty, are reckless without cause, rational without understanding. Among the owls and bats they hang from the buildings and bridges, for nothing has been saved for the winter, and summer is but half constructed. The opossum dances with his mistress, as the priest with his god. The rabbit with his mechanic, as the needle with its habit. For a suckling child shall lead them through the streets of Mexico City. Though the amusements are shuttered and the wind burns cold, the sands of Coney Island shall be the flames of amazement. For when their forests are bare, a child will write them back into existence, one branch at a time, until the wilderness fills with words and Gödel's theorem is enacted. Gödel is consistent. How shall we incomplete him? Gödel, tea kettle. What was the future today? How can we be one now that mastery's gone? What rights must be wrong? What songs have we unsung?
If you could just go back up to the beginning, Paul. Oh, are you stopping the? Okay,
Did you want me to
that's fine.
stop the tape now? What would
That's
you?
okay. That's okay. That's okay. That's all right. I'll just wing it. So basically, I go on from there to talk about this poem. Um, and you can hear the rest of it on your own. I talk about it in relation to the quote that he chose, which obviously exemplifies a kind of uncertainty that I was talking about, a puzzlement, and that I found what he said about fertile contradictions and puzzlement, raising more questions than it answers, interesting to me at any rate. Um, and and I talked a little bit about his Old Testament voice, which you can practice if you want to, but you don't need to. For it will come to pass that they live in Bakersfield in the gardens of Coalinga. So, out of respect for the complexity of the writer, because he's no simple writer, right? Obviously, I looked up things like Coalinga is a town that is funded mostly by the prison industrial complex and oil. So, I learned a little bit about that. And I asked him about people who live in the rock and remain in the rock when they died. I figured that had something to do with the prison or maybe the rock that needs to be fractured to get the oil. He said it's more about the impermeability of being. Again, he's a complex guy. And the dust of their seeing paints them from within. We had a nice long conversation about that. The images that they please themselves with, images of images. These are obviously, you know, comments on something to do with the mass mediaification of our imagination and the ways in which, the society of the spectacle and everything that we look at and, on the screens have kind of taken over our own truths, right? And so people who are suffering might be looking at these screens, and you don't have to say things like, and Fox News says, or whatever, you can, but he's kind of keeping it in a way broader so that it can refer to more than just one thing. And yet he has a very image-centered work. The miser lies down with the master, the skinny clerk with the fat. For the land of the plenty is the land of baristas. For their sisters work at Walmart, and their unions are non-existent. So he moves in and out of complex registers and registers that show versus telling. Really interesting work with line breaks. They live forever, downwind from the disaster. So see how he has a really purposeful line break there about people, communities who often will be placed on floodplains or next to the nuclear reactor or whatever. And we talked a lot about his strange little moments of musical outbreak, like Gettle, Gettle, Tea Kettle, what was the future today? So he would surprise himself as well. So I'm gonna simplify this for you guys. We're not gonna generate a word list right now because of time, but that's what I like to do. You can do this on your own later. I like to let the list be made of the ordinary and the strange. Not knowing what you're going to write about will help the list be fresh. But in the interest of time, let's just move on to part two. Choose a quote for an epigraph. You can see my list, or you can choose any one that you want. So you can start it, preferably one that's a little unknowable to you, so you can write your way into discovery. And then choose a group of people in a specific place so that your descriptions can have that kind of specificity to them, where you're describing them doing things or looking a certain way, or the geography or the place. So it's not all a bunch of generalizations. And then probably just 5 minutes writing what you imagine their world to be, allowing specific images and references to rise up. Just getting a little something down on the page that you can work with later. So I'm going to scroll down here and leave these epigraphs, these quotes up for you to look at. And meanwhile, before I do that, I'm just going to take these little prompts here and pop them into the chat if I can figure out how to have the screen up at the same time. Actually, I feel like I don't know how to do that, so I'm sorry.
You want
Uh,
me to do it?
yeah, thanks, dear.
Mhm.
And I'm just going to give you guys about 6 minutes total just to get a little something on the page so we move on and have time for Paul. Any quick questions before you just try to wrangle with some aspect of this? Basically, just write your way into a specific group of people in a specific place, however you wish to do it. Okay? Thanks. About the 1 minute mark, finish up whatever you're doing. You can return to this later. Thanks. Okay, so we're going to turn it over to Paul now, but I just want to say that really I'm fully aware that there are many moving parts to this prompt, and you can simplify it and just take some aspect of it. I think that the generative gist is choosing a group of people in a place, right? Whether or not you chime off of a word list that you've created or a quote, and that will give your poem a little bit more specificity. So thanks for joining in. Paul?
Thank you, Roxy. What a whirlwind that was. It's hard for me to prepare for my presentation, run the board, put things in the chat,
I'll help.
find out why the sound isn't working, and record this all at the same time. But
Yeah, I'm so sorry. Yeah, let me help with yours if you'd like.
halfway through that, I spit out the gum, and it became so much easier for me to do that. So uh, I'm going to
I'll
go.
remind you of that in the future. Just spit out your gun. All will be well.
Just spit out your gum and all will be well. Yeah, you sounds like you're joking on something. Um, I'm just really delighted to be here, and I get such joy with working with Roxy and Allia. This is really a great way to spend my time. And I'm grateful that you all are here because it shows that you care about what's going on. And I'm a Cascadian, so I'm open to just about any outcome, but one that centers justice for all living beings everywhere. And I think that our work has to be dedicated to that. One line that I heard Cedar Saigo mention came from Joanne Kiger was understanding the history of the place where you live is a political act. And I really think that's a great place for writers to start. What is the history of the place where you are? I did that when I lived in Auburn, Washington. I moved there because of housing prices back in the early 90s. And I found out that before it was called Auburn, it was called Slaughter. And and that the river there that was blown up to divert its course by settlers several times, blown up. They blew up the log jam, and then the river had sort of a different way before it was dammed. The dams took care of that indecision, that river's indecision. But one of the branches of the river was called the Stuck River. So you start with Stuck and you start with Slaughter, and you're off and running. So I wrote a book called A Time Before Slaughter. And to bring up Joanne Kiger again, she said, what a gift to this town that is. And so I would encourage you to think about some kind of saturation job, some kind of multi-decade research project that might find you really investing a lot of time and resources into a long-term project. My presentation is, if you've seen the document, and I'm trying to switch, and I think my computer just, I don't know if it crashed, but
Kind of froze. You want me to do it for you?
I think I got it now. I'm just
Okay.
going to read it. I'm not going to share it. I share this Stefan Meller-May quote: "Poetry is the language for a state of crisis." And I wrote on that day we were asked to write something. I prefer poetry that foregrounds the prophetic over providing comfort. Eileen Miles said that our poetry community was falling behind, and she was on a panel one time, and people were overly concerned with, is this going over? Is it readable? Is it understandable? And she said it was like an ad for comfort. And, you know, we're not in a comfortable time. And perhaps comfort is needed now more than ever, but I think we can get that different ways from poetry. We need to get inspiration from poetry. Our poetry needs to have the kind of duende that the times have. And if you don't know what duende is, there's a great essay by Federico Garcia Lorca that can give you a sense of that. Prophetic poetry, it goes beyond the known. It requires risks, as Roxy was talking about. It often has discomfort. It often has a syntax particular to each poem being written. Traditional syntax is not necessary in poetry. What's necessary is getting your poem to be a high energy construct, favoring luminous details over generalizations and abstractions, and potency over readability. It goes beyond the ego state and its opinions. Charles Olson called it a use of speech at its least careless and least logical. In the handout, I have offered the epistle poem. So that's basically writing a letter to someone. And, you know, it's too easy to write a letter to Trump and say, what did someone call him the other day? Dear Chito Benito or something like that. You know, that's clever. But you know, we need to go to a deeper place than cleverness. So that was one prompt I offered, or at least gave the essay for that, epistolary poetry. And when we were doing this workshop for the Arizona State Poetry Society, it wasn't long after our Poetry Postcard Fest had finished. And so in that, you're writing 31 different poems to people on your list in a 56-day period. So the address to someone was hopefully very well exercised. And there's a link to the poetry postcard exercise. But I like this idea of poetry exercises that are based on or relate current events. And so I'm going to try and see if the screen share will not fry my computer, because I am recording this, so a lot of bandwidth is going. So if I click on that, yes, do I want to do that? I want to do this. Do I want to do this? And I think I just lost it. I think I just, I was trying to click on that, see if it's going to give it to me here. I believe it's coming. So this is an exercise I created a few years ago. The Blavatsky-Kiger-Sanders sketch stealing exercise. There's Madame Blavatsky, who invented theosophy, was a woman centuries ahead of her time, really brought Buddhism to the West like no other human being. There's Joanne Kiger at the Subud House in Seattle, I think taking a picture of either me or George Bowering or both of us. There's Ed Sanders, he of the Fugs and the Yippies who tried to levitate the Pentagon. I hear there's a new movie out about the Fugs. That should be interesting. And the poet works in language, and the average poet has a small vocabulary and standard, comfortable tropes they go back to again and again. This can lead to a dullness that they, the poet composing, can feel. How to stock the poet's mental cupboard with words, images, and ideas, logopoeia, that can propel an interesting and original poem. Joanne Kiger, stealing a bit of Ed Sanders' fire from investigative poetry. And if you go to the link, you'll see that that links to the whole essay. Joanne wrote a beautiful poem, which a rodent press and erudite fangs edition turned into a wonderful chapbook about the fascinating life of the founder of Theosophy, Madame Blavatsky. In doing so, Kiger gave us a version of the Sanders mode that could be applied to a news story from the Times or a whole book, as she did from HPB, The Extraordinary Life and Influence of Helena Blavatsky, founder of the modern Theosophical movement. If you're going to write about something, Blavatsky has it all: magic, spirituality, prophecy, travel, and being about 2 centuries ahead of her time, with notions like how the ruin and extinction of national power follow the eradication of forests, surely as night follows day. Kiger's lineation is a model for the poet interested in doing something original with the field of the page and not just limit themselves to another example of what Michael McClure called lawnmower poetry, which is left-hand justified, which is down one line and down the next line. It also is much more appealing than standard couplets lineation, which has been very popular for the last 10 years, and I don't understand why. Just think of how Madame Blavatsky in 1875 was about friends of all movements in the world, against drunkenness, cruelty to animals, injustice to women, corruption, open hearts to charity, justice and generosity, and soul wisdom, not head learning. This was a proprioceptive poetics about 90 years before Charles Olson's essay, which was a good start. Ed Sanders, of course, has many examples of his use of the approach, including the 3-volume America, A History in Verse, and books on Allen Ginsberg in the year 1968. They're all page turners that stand up to repeated readings. Maybe you start with a newspaper article. You can read it, follow the links in the story, get versed in the background of it, and pick phrases or images that stand out to you and try and keep the, quote, maximum information, minimum amount of syllables that Allen Ginsberg encouraged. Ridding your poem of as many conjunctions and gerunds as possible, and please no adverbs. Something outrageous can work as long as you keep your emotional distance and let the horror speak for itself via imagery. The poetry may come in the setup of poignant points. What you leave out, Miles knew, is often as important as what goes in, right? What are the salient aspects of the story and how to render them poetically? Sanders goes much further with perhaps hundreds of sources for his history in verse, but to get going, start small. And I made a post today with a couple of examples that I sent, and I think some of the people in the room here got these examples. I so related to William Carlos Williams when I read recently or saw a movie about him as I was giving materials for our class, Life as Rehearsal for the Poem and Poetics as Cosmology, that he was fascinated about current events, had to read everything. And so I made this post this morning to alert people at the last minute. So sorry about that. The last minute for this workshop. And I put a couple of stories in there. This one here by Tom Hartman. I'll click on that real quick so you can get a sense of that. If you don't know who Tom Hartman is, he's a radio host and he's quite brilliant. And I think that really says it all. If you're of a certain age, Roy Cohn's Apprentice. Mamma mia, look at the lineage of that, really. What is the lineage from Roy Cohn to Donald Trump to whatever comes after that. So that's one thing where you can glean from that. And I'll put this link in the chat. So if you didn't get that email directly from me, you can see the link and see what I'm talking about. And then this other one here is the big newsletter. This is Matt Stoller's anti-monopoly newsletter. Is it a link? Am I going to get the, here we go. Click on that, and when you're on Zoom the computer is kind of going at its own pace. But in this blog post, he talks about the blast radius of Jeff Epstein. I'll read a bit of it. Larry Summers controlled 2 presidents, Bill Clinton and Barack Obama, and organizes economists and oligarchs. Joe Biden talked to him all the time. And now he's in a serious scandal. Or is he? And he calls him the single most important neoliberal thinker of the last 40 years. Larry Summers had an extensive and deep political and personal relationship with Epstein. He was reportedly on Jeff Epstein's plane, nicknamed the Lolita Express, when young girls were present. And he often discussed his personal political problems with Epstein. And he says, it isn't merely a tabloid story. It is also an important illustration of how our economic order functions. And he goes on from there. So these are two different possibilities in terms of stories. Of course, you might have read a story this morning or in the last couple of days that made a lot more sense and that you want to go from. So, but I want to read one other thing here, and that is this Brenda Hillman. And Brenda also, if you don't know Brenda Hillman's work, I highly recommend it. She's been to several of our Cascadia Poetry Fests. Um, she's an amazing human being and a real committed person. And she wrote this a few years ago, Repertorial Poetry, Trance and Activism, an Essay. Repertorial poetics can be used to record detail with immediacy while one is doing an action and thinking about something else. Experience crosses over with that which is outside experience. The unknown receives this information as an aquifer receives replenishing rain. Meditative states can be used to cross material boundaries, to allow you to be in several places at once, such as Congress and ancient Babylon. I recorded notes in Washington while attending hearings and participating in actions to make the record collective and personal. Working with trance while sitting in congressional hearings, I recorded details into a notebook. If bees can detect ultraviolet rays, there are surely more possibilities in language and government. The possible is boundless. Whether or not you have strength to resist official versions that are devastating the earth and its creatures, you could, in any case, send back reports. If political parties will not provide solutions, the good can occur when people gather in small groups to work for justice in each community using imagination without force. People could leave their computers, at least briefly, to engage with others in public spaces. It is then the potential of each word comes forward. If you have no time or strength, act without time or strength because they may follow. In the meantime, you could imagine that you have them. So I'm going to stop share at this point, and please let me know if you don't have access to that, and I'll stick it into the chat. But this is a technique that you can use with any story, and quite frankly, I think it's one of those tools that each poet should have in their toolbox to be able to read something, whether it be a newspaper or a book or something, and be able to extract the poetry from it. There's a link to Joanne Kiger's piece on Madame Blavatsky, so you can read the whole chapbook, which is a beautiful thing. It's also in her collected poems, I'm fairly certain, and I highly recommend that. What I'd like to do is just offer um, 7 or 8 minutes to write something about the stories. Um, Make sure that your own line, your own lineage in poetry is something better than Roy Cohn to Donald Trump, because that can only lead to shit. And right now we're all suffering as a result of it. So those two stories are available once again. So let's take 7 minutes. It's 1:15 and see what we can come up with. I think if you could wrap up. I made this nice, eloquent request to wrap up, and I was muted the whole time.
Is that enough time, Paul?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, folks, it looks like we have about, 7 minutes until the hour and a half mark for people to ask questions and for people to volunteer to share, maybe one from each of the three prompts if you feel like it. We can also go until 1:45 for those who want us to.
And I just wanted to say that we are doing this as volunteers for this cause. The book will not pay us a salary. Uh, it's kind of silly to even think about that. We're doing this out of love and commitment and because we're excited about the possibilities. We're doing this because we have a strong commitment to language in the poetry community and to seeking justice. And it can be exhilarating to edit a book like this once you get through the arguments that are inevitable. And if you can do that in a harmonious way, friendships are strengthened. There have been people who've made some contributions to this effort at the Cascadia Poetics Lab, cascadiapoeticslab.org. That's the best place to find a donate button. I will hopefully be getting one on the site in the near future, winterinamerica.org, but I don't see one. So we refer you to cascadiapoeticslab.org. If you need more information, get in touch with one of us and we'll make it easy for you. Thank you for your consideration and thank you for attending today. Roxy, I'll let you be the one to guide how the rest of the workshop goes. With gratitude for your kind attention, Roxy and everyone else.
Thanks. I hope I put the right link in for donations for those of you who are inclined to do so. Thanks. Hopefully you got something helpful out of the workshop, whether or not you want to submit. We hope you do. So first, are there any questions about our project, our aesthetics, or our prompts? Or whatever? Any kinds of questions. Like, how did we get here? No, don't answer that one. I can't answer that one. Looks like somebody is unmuting themselves potentially to speak. Is that you, Joseph?
That's me, Joseph.
Okay, good. Go for it.
So I'm a newbie, but I find this very helpful. For a long time in the writing that I've done, which is fairly limited over the years, I always felt kind of stuck with the exercises that you've all proposed and which I've taken part in. I find it really inspiring.